You learned early that your feelings were too much, not because anyone said it directly. That would have been too obvious, too actionable. No, you learned it in the silence. In the way your parents' eyes glazed over when you tried to tell them about your day, in the way conversation shifted the moment you spoke about something that mattered to you, in the way comfort never came. Even when you were drowning, so you made yourself smaller. You learned to read the room before entering it. You learned to assess everyone's emotional temperature before deciding which version of yourself was safe to bring forward. You became a master of emotional camouflage, shape-shifting through environments, never quite solid, never quite seen. And here's the thing, it worked. You survived. You made it through a childhood where your inner world was treated as irrelevant, where your emotional needs were invisible, where love was conditional on your silence. But now you're an adult who doesn't know how to take up space. You apologize for existing, you minimize your pain. You've become so good at not needing anything from anyone that you've convinced yourself you don't need anything at all. You've built an entire identity around being low maintenance, easy, undemanding, and it's killing you softly, one swallowed emotion at a time. This is the core paradox of emotional neglect. The very skill that protected you, the ability to disappear, to self-soothe, to need nothing, has become the prison you now live in. You learned that love is something you earn through your absence, not your presence. That maturity means emotional self-sufficiency to the point of isolation. That being good means never burdening anyone with the messy reality of your inner life. And now, decades later, you're surrounded by people who don't really know you. You're in relationships where you're constantly performing competence and ease. You're exhausted from the full-time job of managing everyone's comfort by erasing your own needs. You've become an adult who can handle everything, except being handled, who can give everything, except receiving, who can love everyone, except themselves. The thing that saved you is now the thing sabotaging you. Emotional neglect is the silent trauma, the wound without a scar. Unlike physical abuse, which leaves evidence, emotional neglect is a crime of omission. It's what didn't happen, the attunement that didn't occur, the validation that never came, the emotional scaffolding that was never built. As clinical psychologist Jonas Webb describes, it's the experience of growing up in a home where your emotional needs were consistently unmet, where your feelings were treated as inconvenient, invisible, or irrelevant. Think of the developing brain as a plant that needs specific nutrients to grow properly. But it doesn't thrive. Its root system remains shallow, always searching, never quite secure. The brain regions responsible for emotional regulation, the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, the insula, all develop through co-regulation with caregivers. When a child experiences distress and a caregiver responds with attunement, soothing, and validation, the child's nervous system learns, this feeling is manageable. I am not alone in it. My emotions are valid and bearable. But when distress is met with dismissal, indifference, or worse, irritation, the child's nervous system learns something entirely different. My emotions are dangerous. They push people away. I must handle them alone. I must become smaller. This creates what psychologists call chronic hypervigilance of the interpersonal kind. You become exquisitely attuned to other people's emotional states while remaining completely disconnected from your own. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for signs of disapproval, disinterest, or disconnection. It's an exhausting, full-body surveillance system that never turns off. You walk into a room and immediately know who's upset, who needs attention, who's about to leave. I'm fine. The psychological term for this is alexithymia, the inability to identify and describe emotions in the self. Not because you lack emotions, but because you were never taught the language for them. Emotions became these overwhelming, unnamed hurricanes inside you, so you learned to simply dissociate from them, to intellectualize, to minimize. It's not that bad. Other people had it worse. I'm being dramatic. And here's where it gets neurologically complex. Emotional neglect fundamentally alters your attachment style. You likely developed what's called avoidant attachment, a learned strategy where closeness feels suffocating, vulnerability feels dangerous, and independence becomes your identity. Or perhaps you swing between avoidant and anxious, never quite knowing if you should pull people closer or push them away, because you never learned what secure connection actually feels like. The philosopher Martin Buber wrote about the I-thou relationship, the experience of being fully seen and met by another consciousness. Emotional neglect is the denial of thou. It's growing up as an it, an object to be managed, not a subject to be known. And so you become an adult who treats yourself as an it, a machine that should function without maintenance. The price you pay for this is immeasurable, and it's paid in a currency most people can't see: the slow erosion of your sense of deserving. Not deserving success or achievement, you might excel at those, but deserving rest, deserving attention, deserving to be cared for. When you're falling apart, you carry an invisible grief. It's the grief of the child who was never asked, "How are you feeling? What do you need?" It's the grief of growing up in emotional solitary confinement while everyone told you that you had a perfectly good childhood. There was no abuse to point to, no dramatic incident to explain why connection feels so hard, just the accumulated weight of 10,000 moments when you reached out and met air. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For the emotionally neglected, this terror is compounded because accepting yourself means accepting that you were failed, that the people who were supposed to teach you that you mattered didn't, that your emotional world was treated as background noise in someone else's life, and acknowledging this feels like a betrayal, both of your family and of the story you've told yourself about why you're fine, why you don't need anything, why you're so independent. But here's the philosophical weight of it. You sacrificed authenticity for belonging, except the belonging was conditional. So it was never real belonging at all. You learned to perform the version of yourself that required the least from others. You became the easy child, the capable one, the one who never complains. And in doing so, you disappeared. The real you, the one with needs, with pain, with desires, was locked away so thoroughly that even you forgot where you buried the key. The core fear that drives this entire pattern is the fear that if people see you at your most vulnerable, they will leave, not because they've told you this, but because your earliest experience has taught you that vulnerability is met with disconnection, that showing your pain makes people uncomfortable, that needing something makes you a burden. So you learn the supreme adaptation to need nothing, to be fine, always fine. This makes even simple moments unbearably complex. Someone asks, "Do you want to talk about it?" And you have to fight every instinct screaming at you to say no, to minimize, to change the subject. Someone offers help and your body floods with shame, as if accepting it confirms you're weak, broken, too much. Someone sees you cry and you feel the immediate compulsion to apologize, to explain it away, to make them feel comfortable with your pain. But emotional neglect teaches you that flourishing is selfish, that your needs are secondary, tertiary, or simply irrelevant. You become an adult who can advocate fiercely for others but can't ask a friend for a ride to the airport, who can comfort anyone but can't text someone when you're spiraling, who gives and gives and gives until you're empty, and then gives more because being empty is familiar. Being empty is safe. This childhood adaptation follows you into adulthood with stunning precision. The coping mechanisms calcify into personality traits that everyone, including you, mistakes for who you really are. But these aren't your true nature. These are survival strategies. And you can see them everywhere if you know where to look. You might find yourself in relationships where you're the eternal caretaker. You attract people who need fixing, whose problems you can solve, whose emotions you can manage. Not because you consciously want this, but because caretaking is the only model of connection you know. You feel most comfortable when you're needed, not when you're wanted. When someone loves you without you having to earn it through service. You don't trust it. You wait for the bill to come due. You might overfunction in professional settings while underfunctioning in your personal life. At work, you're competent, reliable, the person everyone depends on. You say yes to every project, every extra responsibility, because achievement gives you worth in a way that simply existing never could. But at home, you don't know how to rest. You don't know what you enjoy. You've been so busy becoming valuable that you forgot to become yourself. You might struggle with a persistent sense of emptiness that no accomplishment can fill. You achieve the goal, get the promotion, hit the milestone, and feel nothing, because external validation can't heal internal abandonment. The applause is hollow when you are taught that your inner experience doesn't matter. You're chasing achievements to prove you're worth knowing. But no achievement will ever fill the hole left by never having been known. You might have extreme difficulty stating preferences or making decisions. Someone asks where you want to eat, and your mind goes blank. Not because you don't have preferences, you do, but because expressing them feels dangerous. What if you choose wrong? What if your preference inconveniences someone? What if they get annoyed? It's easier to just let other people decide, to stay flexible, to be agreeable. Except now you're 35 and you don't know your favorite color because you were never asked. And you stopped asking yourself. You might experience a profound discomfort with being the center of attention in positive ways. Birthday parties feel excruciating. Someone compliments you and you deflect immediately. Someone wants to celebrate your success and you minimize it. Because positive attention feels unearned, embarrassing, like everyone's about to realize they made a mistake about you. Negative attention or no attention, those feel familiar. But genuine celebration of your existence? That's unbearable. You might sabotage relationships when they get too close. Not consciously, but through subtle withdrawal. You stop sharing, you become busy, you pick fights about small things. Because closeness means vulnerability, and vulnerability means the possibility of being seen and then abandoned. Again. It's a preemptive strike against the inevitable. If you leave first, if you stay surface level, if you never really let anyone in, then you never have to experience the specific pain of being emotionally dismissed by someone you trusted. You might live in a state of chronic emotional numbness, punctuated by overwhelming breakdowns. You're disconnected from your feelings 90% of the time. Everything's fine, you're managing, you're capable. But then something small happens, a minor criticism, a friend cancelling plans, and you completely fall apart because you're not actually processing emotions as they come. You're storing them in some deep internal reservoir, and occasionally the dam breaks. And then you shame yourself for being too sensitive, for overreacting, for being exactly the emotional burden you swore you'd never be. You might find it nearly impossible to ask for help, even in crisis. You'll struggle alone for weeks before admitting you're drowning. You'll sit in your car having a panic attack and still text back, "I'm good," when someone checks in, because asking for help means admitting you can't handle it, and your entire identity is built on handling it, on being the strong one, the independent one, the one who never needs anything. These are not personality flaws. These are not signs that you're broken beyond repair. These are coping strategies that your brilliant, adaptive nervous system created to keep you safe in an environment where your emotional reality was denied. The strategy was perfect for the context, but the context has changed. You're no longer that child in that home. Except your nervous system doesn't know that yet. The crucial first step in unlearning these patterns is witnessing. Not fixing, not changing, just seeing. You have to start noticing when you're minimizing your pain, when you're automatically saying, "I'm fine," when you're making yourself small to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You have to catch yourself mid-apology for existing and ask, what am I actually apologizing for? This process of witnessing is brutal because it means you can't gaslight yourself anymore. You can't tell yourself your childhood was fine. You can't minimize the impact. You have to look directly at the truth. You were failed. Your emotional needs were not met. You deserved better. And that abandonment has shaped every relationship, every decision, every moment of discomfort with your own existence. Healing from emotional neglect is not about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more yourself, the self that existed before you learned to disappear. It starts with reparenting yourself. This sounds abstract, but it's devastatingly practical. It means asking yourself throughout the day, what do I need right now? And then, this is the hard part, actually giving it to yourself. It means learning to speak to yourself the way a loving parent would. Not with toxic positivity or forced affirmations, but with genuine compassion. This is hard. You're struggling. That makes sense. It means practicing what psychologists call emotional granularity, building a vocabulary for your inner experience. Not just, "I'm fine" or "I'm upset," but "I'm feeling dismissed and small right now. I'm overwhelmed and need space. I'm lonely and want connection, but I'm scared to ask for it." The more precisely you can name what you feel, the less overwhelming those feelings become. It means engaging in shadow work, the Jungian practice of integrating the parts of yourself you've disowned. The needy part, the angry part, the part that wants to be taken care of. These aren't weaknesses to overcome. They're exiled aspects of your humanity, waiting to be welcomed back. As Jung himself wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It means choosing softness in a world that taught you hardness was survival. It means learning that boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating space where genuine connection can happen. It means practicing the unbearable vulnerability of letting people see you struggle without immediately fixing it or minimizing it or making it easier for them. It means grieving, actually grieving, not bypassing the anger with premature forgiveness, not spiritually bypassing the pain with gratitude for the lessons, but sitting with the rage that you had to raise yourself, the sorrow that no one asked what you needed, the betrayal that your feelings were treated as inconvenient. This grief is not self-indulgent. It's necessary. It's the bridge between who you had to be and who you actually are. Importantly, healing means understanding that you are allowed to take up space. Your needs are not too much. Your feelings are not a burden. Your presence is not something you have to earn through performance or usefulness. You are inherently worthy of care, not because of what you do, but because you exist. The writer Glennon Doyle captures this perfectly. You are not doing life wrong if it feels hard. Hard is just how it feels when you're rising. This rising is not about fixing yourself. You were never broken. You were adapted to a painful situation. Now you get to choose a different adaptation, one oriented toward wholeness rather than invisibility, toward authenticity rather than acceptability, toward connection rather than self-sufficiency at all costs. The goal is not to become someone who doesn't care what others think. The goal is to become someone who cares about what you think, to build an internal sense of worth that isn't contingent on being low maintenance, easy, or undemanding, to create an inner home where all parts of you, the messy parts, the needy parts, the angry parts, are welcome. You spent your childhood learning to exist in the margins. Now you get to learn to live in the center of your own life, to show up fully, messily, imperfectly, to let people see you. To discover that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the birthplace of connection. To understand that you are not a burden for having needs. You're a human being. There will be days when you revert to the old patterns, when you make yourself small again, when you apologize for existing. That's not failure. That's nervous system reconditioning, and it takes time. But every time you state a preference, every time you let someone comfort you, every time you don't apologize for your feelings, every time you take up space without shrinking, you're rewriting the story. You're proving to your younger self that it's safe now, that you can be seen and not abandoned, that you can need things and still be loved. The emotionally neglected child inside you is still waiting to be asked, what do you need? How are you feeling? What matters to you? You get to be the one who finally asks. And then you get to stay, to listen, to not turn away from the answer. If this resonated with you, if you felt seen in these words, share this with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of survival patterns and the path toward wholeness. And remember, you are not too much. You were just never given enough. And that was never, ever your fault. The goal was never to be fixed. The goal is to become whole. And wholeness includes all of you, even the parts you were taught to hide.